There we go.
All right, so we're recording. So we need to adopt the agenda. We can't really make any changes from these on the agenda for a special meeting.
That's correct.
Motion to
So,
agenda.
Second.
Tom, you want to call?
Motion by Novak, second by Hinkie. Councilmember Hinkie.
Aye.
Councilmember Novak.
Aye.
Councilmember Foreman.
Is that me?
Yep.
I can barely hear you. Sorry.
Oh.
Aye.
Mayor Julius.
Aye. Agenda's adopted, so we'll jump into general business. Got one item with lots of tentacles.
Yes. So the reason for the special meeting today is to approve items related to the extension of utilities to the I-35 County Highway 2 interchange area. Just a quick aerial view showing the infrastructure that will be extended if this project is authorized by the council today. The water line is depicted in the light turquoise here. It will be stubbed under I-35 to the perimeter of the Park I-35 site. And then sanitary sewer will be run from the existing interceptor south in DuPont, stubbed underneath DuPont, again to the perimeter of Park I-35. A sanitary sewer lift station will be installed at the corner of Pillsbury and Highway 2, and a short segment, again, stubbed to the perimeter of Park I-35 property. Council is aware that staff has been working on utility extension concepts since 2014. The primary obstacle with the city's ability to construct the project was simply financing. And in December of 2019, staff came up with a concept financing plan and introduced this to Scott County and the Scott County CDA and property owners. The concept involved participation from the property owners in funding the project, and then some backup financing from the county or the CDA at the time. In the spring of 2020, staff made presentations to Scott County CDA board, County Board of Commissioners, worked with property owners to really introduce and receive support and buy-in for that concept. There was a little lag over COVID last summer, but in October of 2020, the council did direct Bolton and Mink to complete plans and specifications for the project. And in January of 2021, the council approved those plans and ordered advertisement for bids. So the financing structure that was ultimately approved was that the city would bond for the project. Two major property owners at the interchange area, referred to as Wires and Edelman, would each agree to contribute $50,000 annually for 15 years, and that money would be used to offset the debt service on the project. Those annual payments would be a credit towards future development fees that would apply to the property at the time of development, specifically sewer and water trunk fees. Assessments would be levied against the property to guarantee these annual payments. And levying the assessments does require annexation of a portion of these properties. Sewer and water trunk and connection fees collected during development of these properties will also be applied towards the debt service on the bond. And then the CDA will cover any debt service or shortfall annually. So a little about the CDA guarantee agreement is this: the CDA has agreed to a 15-year commitment with an annual contribution of up to $250,000 with a total of up to $3 million. The agreement requires repayment to the CDA no later than December 1st, 2051 with interest. And interest is a little variable based on the agreement. Will go no lower than 1.5% and no higher than 5%. And really through the main term or the next 20 years, it goes no higher than 3%. But then in 2041 to 2051, they are really encouraging payoff by increasing that interest rate to 4 to 5%. And then the agreement with the CDA also does require a refund of Market Village water and sewer connection fees that were paid in 2020, and forgiveness of a couple of remaining payments that they have towards the Market Village apartments. So as we continued to evaluate this concept, we did have to estimate what growth or what revenues might be received in certain build out scenarios. So what we did is really looked at what we thought was a really conservative development scenario on these properties in order to project the revenue that might come in associated with the properties. So for the Zweiers Park I-35 property, it is about 104 net acres, and we just projected that development wouldn't occur for about 5 years on that property, about 35 acres at a time. So 35 acres in 5 years, then no more development for another 10 years, and then no more development for another 10 years after that. So a 25-year build out on that property. And it seems, I know it seems really conservative, but we did look at, how long it took some of the big industrial parks in Shakopee to build out. And, sometimes these projects take decades to build out, and factoring in the economy and not knowing sometimes what can happen with market forces. So that is really the reason for such a conservative approach. On the Edelman property, there are approximately 200 net acres that they own, and kind of a different scenario, just a slower, more consistent takedown. So we're projecting that we might not see development there until approximately 2024 with the initial 10 acres, and then we skipped a few years and then entered developing approximately 6 acres per year for the next several years with a 35-year total build out. So we ran financial analysis based on a couple scenarios, and these are this is what we're calling the low staggered growth, the 25 and 35-year build out scenario that I just described. And then we also did a no growth scenario. What if the worst case scenario, the city runs utilities to the interchange and no development takes place for the next 20 years? And then I also want to just note that the council is aware that staff has been discussing a possible reduction in development fees. So the current model does take into account those reduced fees when we're projecting our revenues. So on the low staggered growth, really there's two things that we need to make sure that we are meeting, and that is that in any given year, the city projected debt on the bond will not exceed that $250,000. And then at the end of the 15-year term, that the debt would not exceed more than the $3 million that they have obligated themselves to. So this is the low staggered growth, where we see contributions on trunk fees annually from the property owners, $50,000, $50,000, $50,000, $50,000. And then in year 5, we see some development of which would put an infusion of cash into the utility fund. And then we worked out a deal that because there's this large infusion in this year, that they could use that to offset the future year's $50,000 payment obligation. So the city will essentially take that and use that money to pay the future years. So in this, and then you see some additional infusions of cash based on connection fees. And again, we have modeled a reduction in what our current fees are based on some discussions we intend to have with the council. So we think this is a really conservative scenario. If we do see growth out in the interchange area, you can see that we will not exceed $250,000 in a given year. And we would have about $1.3 million in debt at the end of the 15 years. So in the no growth scenario, where the two property owners would contribute their $50,000 a year minimum payment obligation, which is really a prepayment of their development fees. That $100,000 would be used to offset the bond payments, and in any given year, here through year 15, we will not exceed the $250,000 cap by the CDA. And at the end of the 15-year term, there would be a total balance of approximately $2.6 million. Property owner agreements, we worked hard in January through March of this year to work with the property owners and their legal counsel. There were really a couple of main agreements, pre-development agreements that we have asked them to enter into, and that really lays out the foundation and expectations for what is expected or what may be expected of them should they develop their properties. And as an example, they may be expected to cost participate in transportation infrastructure at the entrance to their development, such as a traffic signal or turn lanes or something of that nature. So pre-development agreement sets out expectations should they develop. Then annexation resolutions, which would formally annex the property into the city. The special assessment agreements that outline the terms of the payments, minimum $50,000 a year payments. And then both properties had a number of easements that needed to be signed in order to construct the project. And all agreements have been executed by all property owners. As directed, the city engineer did advertise the project for bid, and bids which were opened on March 12th. The city engineer has reviewed the bids. He has included a letter in the council packet recommending award of alternate A to the lowest bidder. This is just a snip of the bids that were received. There was a partial bid which would have extended utilities just to the west side of the interchange. But because we have all agreements in place, we are recommending approval of alternate A, the full project at $2.975 million. There are a number of city council action items that are needed to move this project forward. Regarding the Edelman property and the pre-development agreement, annexation resolution, special assessment agreement, and then 4 easements. This is a depiction of the area that will be annexed. This is approximately 50 acres. And the location is really based on what they believe will be developed first and easiest to service with sanitary sewer. The Zwires property, again, the council is being asked to approve the pre-development agreement, annexation resolution, special assessment agreement, and 3 easements. And this is the property that will be annexed into the city on the east side of the interchange, and I believe it is approximately 68 acres. The council is being asked to approve an amendment to the PUD agreement for the Market Village apartment complex that addresses a reduction of a waiver and any future payment obligations for WAC and SAC, and approval of the guarantee agreement. And finally, the council is being asked to award the project to Ryan Contracting Company for a bid price of $2.975 million. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Renee. So when we, just from a process standpoint, we can do all this in one motion if we chose to do so, correct?
Yes.
Before we take any motions, anyone have any comments or feedback or questions or anything?
Was the, excuse me, apparently I can't talk. The Market Village fees and waiving those in the future, was that always part of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's part of what gives the CDA some of the capacity to provide the assistance that they're.
Tom, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with your speaker, Tom. It was always part of the agreement going in. I think the CDA was never really happy about the fees that they had to pay with Market Village, and that was just one of the criteria to even open the discussions.
Is my sound better now?
Yes.
Yeah, it is better. It probably goes without saying, but a huge thank you to Scott County, to the CDA for their work on this, and of course, a big thank you to city staff for all their work on this. This isn't something that the CDA does lightly. I don't know if they ever do this sort of thing, if they ever have previously. But the CDA and the county are really committed to seeing growth in Elko New Market. And, although we worked hard to get them to, cooperate with us on this, it really didn't, the motivation was always there. So I just wanted to be on record as the city really appreciates that support from our partners. That's all I wanted to add to this. Does anyone else want to add anything before we look for motions?
If I could echo your remarks, Mr. Mayor. So the Edelman property, I've seen concept plans for that property going back to the early 2000s. And our discussions with Ryan Companies began actually back in 2011, 2012. So the work to start opening and developing up these properties goes well over a decade. And what we're doing today, I don't think it's not the end, although it's a huge benchmark. It's the culmination of a decade worth of foundation that's been laid. I would agree, Ryan Companies, who initially came out and brought their horsepower and resources to start the discussions of opening up the interchange area, was extremely beneficial. Working with Casey Hankinson and Dan Mueller there has been very productive for us. Big thanks to Dan Zweers and his ownership partners. They've been excellent to work with, and we've developed an excellent working relationship with them over the years. Same thing for Dave Edelman and his partners as well. But working with Bruce Radine and Jim Connolly at APRO and Cerrone over the years to help pull these concepts together has been fantastic. I'd agree the mayor's comments, the county board, their support, but specifically the CDA board. It's not just the current financial support that they're providing, but the hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants that they provided for looking at the 2 corridor and also the interchange area over the last several years has been what's enabled us to actually get to this point to have this conversation. Specifically, Bill Jaffa, Adam Johnson, their finance director, and Stacy Crakes was huge. Also, Barry Stock on their board, who was engaged in a lot of the early discussions, was huge. And I think the mayor's a little bit too modest. I think he was instrumental in cementing a lot of the political support for this in the last couple of years. And then staff needs to be recognized. The support work that Haley did, all of the work that Rich has done over the last decade on trying to develop this concept and get it going, but especially to Renee, who over the last 18 months has really carried the water on the detail work. And even in the last 48 hours, trying to pull all of this together for the meeting today, has done fantastic work on this. So that's my little Oscar speech on this thing. So thanks, guys.
All right, so who's going to now come out and argue against this? Amanda, is it going to be you?
It's not gonna be me.
All right. Assuming there's no more discussion to be had, Tom, can you maybe summarize the motion that's needed and then maybe someone can pick up on that?
I believe that we could pass a motion to approve all of the actions outlined within the staff report, approving resolutions and approving the attached agreements.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
So who had the first on that?
That was
It is a
Bryce.
tie.
You can give
So-
you can give it to Bryce, that's fine.
So motion by Shanky, second by
Amanda.
Amanda. Councilmember Shanky,
Aye.
Councilmember Novak,
Aye.
Councilmember Timmerman,
Aye.
Mayor Julius.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
All right.
On to adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Novak, second by Timmerman. Tom, you want to call?
Councilmember Shanky,
Aye.
Councilmember Novak,
Aye.
Councilmember Timmerman,
Aye.
Mayor Julius.
Aye. All right, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank
Have a
you.
good day.